Professor Pant, it's one thing for the Chinese to do this in the South China Sea, as they often do, find an unoccupied rock and put an airstrip in that and say, guess what, this is Chinese territory. But in the case of Arunachal Pradesh, it's somewhat different. I mean, India has been in possession of Arunachal Pradesh all along. Our law ministers from Arunachal Pradesh, people in Arunachal Pradesh vote in elections. There's absolutely no doubt as to who is in possession of the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So changing the names of some territories over there is not going to create any doubt in anybody's mind anywhere in the world, including in China, as to who's in possession of Arunachal Pradesh and the fact that it's an integral part of India.
Yes, but I think, Vikram, Chinese also never really gave up on keeping the pressure on India, right? So every time you would have a prime ministerial visit or every time you will have Dalai Lama visiting there, they would come out with an official statement, and that's their strategy, right? They don't give up on their even smallest of claims, hoping that some of these claims could be used at the negotiating table. So they are, in that sense, they have a peculiar way of negotiating, and they have a peculiar way of keeping the pressure on. So even when they were, we had relatively better ties with them. You would recall that off and on Arunachal would come up, you as a reporter or you would report it, that they are saying, they have come up with a statement that, look, Arunachal, South Tibet belongs to China and this is, India is occupying it. So they have consistently from their position made this statement. Of course, as you point out, it's a reality as to who is in control. And a lot of this would depend on how far are they willing to go militarily on the border. But as they are demonstrating, just last December, we had Tawang, engagements with the soldiers on both sides. Again, both the pressures are on from militarily, diplomatically, as well as I think through the legal mechanisms which they keep on perpetuating.
But having said that about the Chinese thinking long terms, I'm not sure whether the Chinese are thinking through the full implications of all of this. We've already seen the United States coming out very strongly in India's defense on this issue and saying very clearly Arunachal Pradesh is part of India. Now, there may be a lot of irritants, a lot of irritation that keeps happening between the West and between India. But in many ways, would you feel that this is also a wake-up call to India to keep on realizing and to keep the eye fixed on who the real enemy is, who the real threat is? Because I guess a lot of analysts and experts would feel that the only real enemy, the only person with whom you can get into a shooting war who matters is China. And to that extent, India's foreign policy may have to be calibrated accordingly.
Absolutely. I think, there is no doubt that you have, in foreign policy, there is a longer game and there is a shorter game, right? In the short to medium term, you may, for example, want a certain kind of distance from the West or to create some space between you and the West for certain kinds of issues where you don't get along. But I think increasingly when we are looking at the big picture, you are coming to the conclusion that that big picture is being looked at through similar prisms by the West, and in particular by the US and by India. And there is no denying that. We have seen in terms of our operational capabilities, enhancing those capabilities. We have seen that in terms of what we are doing militarily with certain countries, what we are doing with on critical and emerging technology. So I think if you look at the big picture, you see that China is emerging as a challenge. And a challenge of a kind that India is not in a position to unilaterally respond to. And that is also becoming clear. And, sometimes there is a complaint that why is India not taking a more robust position? And the argument is pretty simple, that, look, we are a decade, if not more, behind China in terms of our capabilities. And when you don't have internal capabilities, external partnerships become a mechanism of leveraging your engagements to your national interest. And I think that's what perhaps will have to be done much more robustly.
All right, Professor Pant, I think you make some really important points out there. Thank you so much for joining us. And look, my take on this entire matter is to say I think what Professor Pant has just said is something that we need to keep in mind. There's often a tendency here in India to react rather vociferously to whatever may happen in the West, and West will say something, make some statements we don't like, there will be irritants. But at the end of the day, the big threat, the big enemy is China, and it's going to remain China for a long period of time.